Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's warm again. We had a nice little cool down and it got hot.
Oh, yeah. It's 1:15 here today, so
Oh, I don't think it's
staying
even that
indoors.
hot here. God bless you.
It's not the best. So today we are talking about probably sex. I
Yeah,
think that's
more
going to
like
come
it.
into it. Yeah. So you want to
It's
tell us,
inevitable with me usually.
yeah, give us some background on you and what your current offering is and
Well, I much like a couple of the other members of Fit for Service, I have a plan for a property that's going to be somewhat of a healing space, a retreat space, but will also be my home. And there's a number of nonprofit organizations tied up that I'm trying to pivot towards. But for the last probably better part of 15 years, but definitely 12, I've been a full service sex worker in as my primary source of employment. And prior to that, I was in real estate. But I've been happily working in the adult industry for the last 12 years. And yeah, that's just trying to figure out how all of the things I've learned from this environment are going to be best put forth into the world, the greater community of the world, so that it's put to good use, you know?
yeah. So you have a unique position though as a sex worker. Like you're not walking down the street with a
No,
pimp.
no. I've I've been I've been on OnlyFans doing some content and stuff for the last maybe 4 years, but most of my career has been in service, private one-on-one encounters as a full service high-end escort, and had the unique opportunity to have undivided attention and the ear of some generally affluent, successful men that are in the envelope of secrecy and feel comfortable to be vulnerable, which I don't think we see very often out of men. So, like a peek behind the curtain, I suppose.
Yeah. And there's a measure of healing that goes into what you're doing with them. So that is like not ever talked about. When we talk about sex workers, we talk about them being like victims of some kind of incident. And so now they don't value themselves. And so now they're doing this because they're desperate or they have low self-esteem or whatever. So that's not the lens that you have, as far as I know.
No, honestly, I would argue that my self-worth and confidence were only strengthened and boosted by putting a value to my time and energy that I was giving to someone. I think that the sexual liberation that is occurring with like the younger generations, it's amazing. It's awesome that women are taking their power back and like being in control of their sexuality. But unfortunately, there's no the self-worth aspect is, I feel like, failing them a little bit because there's no structure in place. They don't have any boundaries around who's going to get access to them. And I would argue absolutely my self-esteem and self-worth was improved from sex work compared to where I was before, because inherently when you put a value on something and say this is what my time and energy is worth, you're going to treat it with a degree of respect that you weren't otherwise.
So I don't know if you want to go there, but do you want to talk about kind of where you were before?
I mean, I'm comfortable talking about anything.
Okay.
We've created this beautiful container where it feels good. I have an amazing family. I didn't have any trauma in my childhood. I have as close to a Leave It to Beaver upbringing as I can imagine. some of the stories I've heard from women as I've been in these containers of like trust and vulnerability and safe, protected spaces have just broken my heart, because I never had to suffer through any of that. I didn't come to sex work because I was a broken individual. I did have some sexual trauma at the hands of a boyfriend. My first ever experience with sex was not voluntary. My first probably 30 or so times was not voluntary. It was all the same boyfriend. And he had just mind fucked me enough to where I even though I lived at home with my family and could have just opened my mouth and said something, I was broken down emotionally to the point where I was tolerating it. And the hardest thing for me in my healing was forgiving myself for number 2 through 30-ish, you know, all of the subsequent times after the first time, because if I had just opened my mouth and said something, it would have never happened twice. I have 4 brothers and a father who were loving and protective, and it wouldn't have ever happened to me twice. But that was because he broke me down and had damaged my self-esteem and my self-worth and made me believe things that were not true, that somehow he had made me unworthy of somebody else's affection or attention because of what he had done to me. And there was nothing at all wrong with me. So, and I'm highly intelligent. I should have known this, but I was vulnerable. I was young and my emotions were involved. So I spent a good portion of my early 20s, my teens and early 20s, really just aggressively trying to fully embody my sexuality again and have it be my decision and feel in power of that. So I was a bit of a tart, I would say, but thankfully I was scared into a position of extreme safety by him. When that all happened, I had to go get tested for 2 years because he wasn't obviously using protection, and so that caused me to have really hyper responsible safe sex practices, which could have gone a different direction if I hadn't had that experience. But yeah, I came to sex work after a successful career in real estate just because I'm a very sexual creature. I have accepted that about myself, and I think a lot of us we're not honest with ourselves about how important intimacy and sexuality and sex and physical connection with our partner is on the scale of where we're going to put the traits that we're looking for in a mate. And I tore the box down that society tried to build around me years ago. And there's no way somebody's going to build it back around me on my watch. But I see so many people that are in the wrong relationships, you know, my friends, family members, that they just weren't honest with themselves about how important sex was to them. Maybe they didn't even know at the time. A lot of the time they didn't even realize that it was going to be as important as it was to them. And then they find themselves in a relationship where their sex drive, their desire is completely unmatched from their partner. And they haven't put any structure in place for how to have a difficult conversation with their partner, because we've broken communication between men and women. And so they're just in this situation where they think they're doing their children some favor by staying together, and nobody's happy. They may not be fighting, but they're not loving. And that's where your kids learn about love, is their direct environment. So I feel like we're ruining the human experiment around sexuality. We really are. We're not doing very good by it. We've taught men everything they need, that they know about sex, they've learned from porn. And porn is sex for a camera angle. It's not sex for pleasure. And it's not intimate by any means. There's a camera crew in the room. And, you know, a lot of editing has gone into making that video look like it's 2 people actually enjoying an intimate act, but it's really not intimate at all. And the people that we're looking to be our sexperts, per se, are not really that well versed in sex a lot of the time. So
yeah, there's a lot of reading from a textbook, some theory, and then trying to teach it, but not having a lot of experience. I want to highlight something you said at the beginning, which was kind of describing your experience with that boyfriend. And that is probably the vast majority of what we're seeing in sex trafficking, which is a man comes in, could be a woman, and butters you up and then tears you down emotionally so that you are now, because a lot of times it's in a child's own neighborhood and they're going to a neighbor's and that neighbor is actually pimping them out. And because they have been broken down so much emotionally, they aren't talking about it to their family, and it's happening right under their family's nose.
And I agree, and I think it's horrendous how many innocent how many lives, when there's still innocence involved, just get ruined. And that you don't have sexual trauma that doesn't carry forward and affect you for the rest of your life. It just doesn't happen. Nobody's just okay after that. And it's happening right underneath everybody's noses because we've created an environment where it's inappropriate to talk about sex. Exactly. I think if more people in their household, in their family, were not treating sex like like the redheaded stepchild, if they were having appropriate conversations surrounding sex at home, it would be a lot harder to victimize someone, because it's a lot easier to tell somebody that this is our secret if the topic itself is taboo and secret. If the topic doesn't seem taboo or secret and children feel comfortable to talk about it with their family and ask questions, it's a lot harder to get one over on someone. I was fortunate. I had a really awesome household. Like, we could ask literally anything. I don't think a lot of women learn anything about their bodies when they're young. I don't know where my mom got this brilliant idea, but when I was starting to get to the point where she thought I might be growing hair and getting a period and stuff, she took me in the bathroom, because I took baths that night, and she grabbed me and took me in the bathroom and handed me a handheld mirror, stuck it on the floor and said, "Squat." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "You need to be familiar with your body, because it's going to be changing, and you need to know what's normal and what's not. So if you have any questions, you can ask." But when I tell that to a lot of my girlfriends, they're like, "Oh my God, I wish somebody had told me." Like, I figured out about periods when I started bleeding all of a sudden, and I thought I was dying or something. We don't really have functional sex education in this country at all. And it's certainly not at the age we need to, because we've been putting steroids in all the food, and such that kids are getting their periods at like 10 years old.
Yeah.
That's been trending down steadily. Yes. Younger and younger, which means we need to be teaching them about their bodies way younger than we are. It shouldn't be happening in 6th grade.
Right. And I think I've heard recently that kids in Europe are more likely to, that's a generalization that I don't want to make, but maybe a little more likely to speak to their parents about their sexual activity at a younger age. That's something I heard.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I've traveled quite a bit. I traveled a lot in my 20s. And I think a lot of that lent itself to where my sexuality ended up landing, which, I mean, I think is a very healthy place. I feel good about my sexuality. I don't think there's anything shameful about it. I haven't got any parts of my sexual desire that are in a dark corner. But you see topless beaches more in Europe, and you see there's just more like natural, healthy, organic sexuality, that little aspects of it that are on display in common culture. So it would make sense that a kid would feel comfortable talking to their parents about it, because they haven't made it such a taboo subject.
Yeah, and I would say that religion has a lot to do with that. I think, the United States was settled by a lot of Puritans, Quakers, Protestants. Yeah. There were certainly Catholics and other religions, but that is where we get this idea that sex is shameful, needs to be a secret, is quiet. But we have to remember that humans are animals, just like animals, and we have bodies and we're not above the functioning of our body, not superior to it, nor should any of it be shameful, embarrassing.
Yeah. We are extremely puritanistic here, and it's ridiculous. Like, if you think about how much of our history was mammalian versus how much of it has been socialized human, it's drastically different. Like, the majority of our entire existence on this earth, we were animals. And animals don't have language. Like, you can't say, there's no such thing as consent. Consent that doesn't exist in the animal kingdom. So we've come a long way. I think we fail to give ourselves credit for how much we've socialized ourselves in such a short period of time, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, this is something you and I talked about, where you were saying, okay, humans have been around, I don't know, somewhere between, I think Neanderthals were like 200,000 years ago, where not too long ago, a few hundred years ago, possibly 2,000 years ago, being that we were animals, the male animal would just take the female animal and have sex with them.
And we didn't have language. Like, I'm sure that instinctually our instincts were stronger. So you maybe knew what was going on once you find yourself pregnant. But you find yourself pregnant. I mean, if you, quote unquote, went into heat and were approached by a male and knocked up, you had nothing to explain that process to you. You were aggressively, brutally penetrated, usually. And then a few weeks later, you just started feeling different. And then you're growing another human, and now you're responsible for another life. There was no structure around that. That's how the animal kingdom works. We've got so many more tools in place to manage how human sexuality occurs, like the play between men and women, and we're not utilizing a quarter of what we've developed to communicate everything else. We're not using language, we're not using body language properly, apparently. Like, the number of times I've had, like, in my work environment, somebody saying, "Oh, it's so nice that you actually communicate what you like and what you don't like." And I'm like, I don't understand where women just were not saying, "Hey, I don't like that very much. That doesn't feel good." We've made it so shameful to talk about sex. Women haven't even embraced their own bodies. Women haven't discovered most women don't even know how to get themselves off. I would bet at least 50% of the women out there could not reliably give themselves an orgasm in 15 minutes every single time, because they don't even know their own roadmap. They haven't explored their own bodies, let alone like be able to teach somebody else how to do something to them. I think we need to stop shaming women's sexuality, for sure, because all of the men out there that are shaming women's sexuality, it's really counterproductive. I don't know why they're cock blocking themselves so much. I really don't.
That's true.
Like, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Like, if you make us feel shameful about the thing that you want to do with us, it's not going to bode well.
That seems obvious, but it doesn't seem to be.
I know.
Yeah. So this whole religious thing has a lot to do with why women aren't taught about their bodies and why we're not allowed to talk about it. And there are passages in the Bible that talked about a woman either having an affair or a daughter sleeping with a man, and then her father stoned her to death. So that's not going to be productive for anybody. That's just ridiculous. And you and I also discussed how you have noticed that girls that are raised without religion also do not have the proper boundaries around valuing their
Well,
body and partners.
Yeah. Essentially, I really think the concept of religion, it was a good idea. Like we were barbarians at that time when we really did need some rules in place to like govern, because we were so much closer to animal then than we are now. So it made sense why they might have codified some set of rules or moral code. But the problem is it became such an unhealthy institution, all of them really, that there's now no structure in place. There's nothing that we don't have any courtship rituals. Young girls don't have any boundaries around their time, their energy, not even just their sex, but their time and their energy and their affection and their attention. It doesn't take much for them to give away the most valuable resource they have, their time, and focused attention on something. There used to be a process by which a man wooed you. You know, there was dating. You'd have to kind of convince the girl to let you touch her. It's now just like, yeah, it's wonderful that these young girls are embracing their sexuality, but there's no structure or standards in place for what's going to be acceptable. Like, what is your minimum requirement for entry? Like, there's a height restriction to get on a roller coaster. There should be some kind of standards in place for what you're going to give your time and energy to. And I think that just nobody's talking about the failure in that regard. And that was something that religion, unfortunately, it took things too far, but it did give you this reason to be mindful of who you give access to your body. It was dysfunctionally surrounding you being chaste and virtuous for a man, which I don't think is right. I think you should take time to like really understand yourself and what makes you happy, what gives you pleasure. But these are physical exchanges that involve a significant amount of your emotions and a ridiculous hormone dump. It's addictive. Sexual arousal is as addictive as any altered state because it's the same hormones that are dumping into your body and being stimulated and triggered. So it should be treated as mindfully as you would treat taking engaging in an altered state for the first time or drinking alcohol. Like they're young. Their emotions are gonna get involved. They're not taking into consideration the potential fallout, like babies or diseases. I think because we have medications to treat the really bad STDs now, it's almost like it's not even a conversation. I'm never surprised when I say, wait a minute, when was the last time you've been tested? And the length of the pregnant pause tells me everything I need to know. Like, if the pregnant pause is really long, there's a very good chance that person has never been tested for STDs. And they've probably had partners, multiple. I just don't think that we're approaching young people's sexuality at all correctly. And I don't think young people are approaching their intimacy, not just sex, but their intimacy. Who am I going to allow in to my emotions, to my feelings, so that I don't get hurt? Because let's face it, the goal of dating as a young person should be to find out what you like and don't like. And instead, we've created an environment where women think they need to keep their number low, so they don't want to date around. So you're gonna that's just asking to end up in a manipulative, bad situation. If you haven't dated a few different people, if you're worried more about your image and not being viewed as a slut or made to think that you're easy, if that's more important to you because of society's pressure, then really sussing out who's a good mate for you. Like, what is a non-negotiable for you? What is something you're not willing to tolerate? And there's so many dysfunctional households. The parents, the relationship of the parents isn't a shining example of what a healthy relationship looks like. So where are they getting their example for what to model theirs after? They
Right.
really, I mean, I think that it's always better to have two loving, intimately connected, vibrant households rather than one married couple that are passing each other in the hallway and are just basically good roommates. Like, everyone has a right and a responsibility, I think, to think about their own happiness. We've got a mental health problem on this planet, and it's because everyone's more worried about what anybody's going to think of them than what they think of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. We're severely lacking self-love, and it has everything to do with shame culture and playing this role of this type of person so that your neighbors don't think you're weird or whatever. But we're all weird, and that's totally fine. And we need to know what we really want. Functioning through life without knowing what we actually want is a complete waste of the gift of life.
I've been living my life, at least for the last probably 4 years for sure, but I think I was like somewhat embodying the concept before that. I want to show up as my most authentic self so that whoever comes into my life and is loving me is loving me. I don't want to put a projection out there and find that they don't like the real me as it unfolds over time is something that the people that I've invested my time and energy into don't love or don't like. So, I mean, I'll take all of she's not my speed, so that I can have the handful of genuine connections that you really want in life. But I think that, I mean, we've broken things for kids quite a bit. I mean, technology is amazing, but they're interacting with everybody through a screen. There's so many men that are so socially awkward because they've been engaged with technology, which is great, and maybe they're going to have a great career in technology, which seems to be where all the money is lately. But then they wake up from their screen and they want physical connection, they want intimacy with an actual human woman, and they have no idea how to interact with you. I call them projects, like my socially awkward little delicious gems that they want to interact with us appropriately, but they don't know how, because it's not just that they haven't been interacting with women, they haven't been interacting with anyone in person, face to face. We've created an environment where there's no consequences for the things you say online. You don't have to like socialize yourself by finding out that you're kind of an asshole, or you're really an unpleasant personality and maybe you should work that out. Like, it's broken. It really is broken. Communication is really important, and we're not doing enough of it.
So speaking of intimacy, often, when you're dating, we say that the first year you have completely put on a mask where you're just trying to be whatever you think that person wants you to be. And then by the end of the second year, those masks have kind of disintegrated. You're starting to see the real person. And that's when people break up because we were lying. So,
and you just wasted a year of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a year further down that timeline. Like childlessness in women is a problem. Listen, some people don't want to have them, but I know so many women that they haven't found their person. And if they are trying to do life in the order of operations that they want the partner before they're going to have the child, they've been on birth control and they don't have any children. And now you've got to wait for your hormones to reset when you go off birth control if you do meet the person. But like, every minute fucking counts. Like, let's not keep wasting our time dating the wrong people. But we've made it somehow shameful to be dating. I thought that's what the whole point of this was, you know, like, but because sex does involve the possibility for things like diseases and children, rightfully so, yeah, you shouldn't be irresponsible with your body, just having unprotected sex with all your partners. But we've got solutions for that people are unfortunately not using, not talking about using. And like, I mean, you're just going to end up, I call it sending in your representative. Like, I have so many friends and I'm like, their relationship 3 months in is falling apart. And I'm like, yeah, Joe, because you're a workaholic and you sent in your representative who had all kinds of time to spend with her because you were so excited about it. But she was used to having you 4 nights a week for date night because it was new and it was enjoyable. But then eventually your work schedule demanded your attention and things leveled back out. And now she thinks that you're cheating, you know, because we send in our representative instead of just showing up as a version of ourselves. My rule of thumb is if it's not something you can sustain reliably for 3 years, why are you going to lead with that?
Right.
Like, the version of yourself that you put out into the dating environment should be something that is a representation of the person you're going to be in 3 years consistently. If you want it to work anyway.
Right.
If you aren't made of money, don't be leading with a bunch of expensive steakhouse dates, you know? Maybe cook her dinner at your house, learn a skill or two, find a meal that you can cook. But we're just not doing it right. There's every way we could possibly be failing ourselves. And we all want connection. Like, we're not meant to be solitary creatures. That's why we go crazy in solitary confinement.
Right. And a device is not a connection and it's not intimacy. And I think one of the major problems that we have is that we use the words being intimate to describe sex. But sex can be the least intimate thing that ever happens. And so we need to rediscuss what the word intimate means. So intimacy involves authenticity. It involves dedicated, active listening, vulnerability. One of the practices we use is circling and eye gazing. Like, that is so incredibly difficult and uncomfortable, and there need not be all that discomfort with it. Why is it so hard to look somebody in the eye? Because we're not being our authentic selves for most of the time.
Yeah. Another thing is, we used to have huge households, like, because you needed a bunch of kids to work the land that you were, you know, trying to grow stuff on. More and more family units are getting smaller, and a lot of the socialization that happens with your siblings when you're a kid. A lot of the interaction you're going to get and how your personality develops happens in a household with your siblings. So if you only have one sibling or you're an only child, you're already behind the 8 ball there. And more and more we're disappointed with the education system, so people are being homeschooled, so they're not being socialized outside of any household family unit that they have. So we're missing that in-person connection. I have 5 siblings. Like, I can't imagine not hugging someone when I see them that I haven't seen in a while. And it's so uncomfortable for some people just to receive a hug. It's like you're breaking their physical space. I've never encountered. So it's actually been really eye-opening for me, because there's a good amount of the people that are in these containers that I've been trying to do some personal growth in that are younger than me, a lot younger than me. And I'm baffled by how challenging it is for them to be in close physical proximity to other humans. Like, when I hear people talking about what was a challenge for them, what was a big breakthrough for them on these events, a lot of the time it involves that physical closeness, and not even touch necessarily, but being close physically to someone. And for me, that wasn't my reality. Like, I had a very physically affectionate family as well, but not inappropriately so. But I mean, like, I hug and kiss all of my siblings every single time I see them. I can't imagine doing anything less. And I'm like, when I'm listening to other people's stories, I'm like, oh wow, there's a real problem. Like, we've really messed up socialization for the generations, I think, below, like where you and I are. It just seems to be progressively, it's gotten less contact, less in-person communication, less touch generally at all. And I don't know why. I can't explain why. I don't know if there just weren't people around, but
Well, I think it has to do with what you mentioned before about the families getting smaller. I think it also has to do with people around our age, our generation, and our siblings having experienced abuse, trauma, so much shame and judgment in the social environments that they grew up in, within their siblings, within their churches, within their families. And so as parents, becoming very hyper vigilant about protecting our kids from not having any experience like that, which, in order for that to not happen at all, you have to be in relationships with other really healthy humans, and there are not that many.
You know, I have this phrase I use a lot in a lot of different circumstances. As humans, we have a tendency to overcorrect. We see that we've done something wrong, and we're like, oh shit, like we don't really want to be this horrible person. We didn't really see this blind spot that we had. So the pendulum swings too far the other direction. We overcorrect, and we're constantly waiting for it to settle in the middle somewhere. And I think we need to stop, like, try to be aware of the overcorrection, because, you know, it's like, it goes from slavery to affirmative action. Like, if we just go, yes, okay, accepting that we've done something wrong, great. But it's just like when you spin out in a car. If you overcorrect, you're going to cause a bigger problem than if you just carefully steer into it. You know, we have to acknowledge where our shortcomings are, forgive ourselves for them, and find a way to move forward that's more healthy. And we have a problem with the forgiving ourselves part, a big problem.
Yes, we do. Something I plan to have another podcast with Amanda Huey about, it's because we were both raised in very fundamentalist religions, is self-flagellation. When you are raised in an environment where punishment and command and control are the default, once that caretaker has been removed from the situation, you become your own punisher. You become the prisoner and the prison guard. So you start whipping yourself with your own inner critic, and all these voices that happen in our head, like, you shouldn't be doing that. That's irresponsible. Like, you really messed up. It doesn't result in self-forgiveness, and it doesn't allow us to have forgiveness for anybody else. And a lot of the behaviors that we were punished for or learned to stop doing were simply about not triggering our parents. It wasn't necessarily that the behavior was really bad. It was more about, just don't, that behavior drives Steve nuts. Don't be so loud. Don't be. And so, like, there's a punishment that happens, and then it kind of takes us out of our true nature and teaches us that we're bad and that we're gross or shameful. And so learning to.
My grandmother used to say, Kimmy, children are meant to be seen and not heard. And it was like, she would shush me. To this day, if somebody shushes me, it's like, enrages me. It's like one of the few things that's really triggering for me, because, like, my mom's family was very waspy, and then our household was not. So we were encouraged to have a voice. We all had a voice, and we were allowed to involve ourselves in adult conversations. Like we were allowed to be in the room. It wasn't like the kids, we were part of the family. So for her to be treating me that way was very bizarre to me, and I was the youngest, so I didn't really understand. I now know she was also a terrible drunk. I thought she was drinking water in her and my cousin told me, no, she was 3 scotch and waters in by the time any food was ever served. And I was like, oh, huh. I didn't know. But I was raised Catholic, so I went to church every Sunday with my father. Thankfully, my mother was not religious. She was spiritual. She wasn't religious. So I had a balance, but I see in others, and I can see where even in my household, it could have gone in the direction of, creating an unhealthy environment for me internally, emotionally. But I shamed myself for years. I really did. It was probably that happened with him when I was 14. I would say a good 10 years of my, life, I was very much slut shaming myself. But the more I've embraced like who I am sexually, there was no sexual imagery on television when I was in elementary school, middle school. The first mention of sex that I ever saw or heard was talking about Kelly losing her virginity on 90210. And I was, I think, in middle school at the time. So it's not that I had any sexual imagery to pull from. So I know wholeheartedly, because of the things that I was engaging in when I was a child with my Barbies and my friends when we would play, I for sure was going to be this sexual creature no matter what. It was inherently in me. It had nothing to do with my environment. It had nothing to do with being stimulated by a television. There was no stimulation. I didn't walk in on my parents having sex. There was never any abuse, like sexual abuse or misconduct that I ever saw. And I had Barbie and Ken having full-on orgies in my Barbie dream house. And I have no idea where I got that imagery from. It was inherently already there. So I can't continue shaming myself for something that is just inherently in my DNA. It was going to be this person. Somebody can try to tell me that it was from the rape that I suffered at the hands of the boyfriend, or it was from this too relaxed of a household. There's no one's going to be able to convince me that when I was a kid, what I was wanting to play out in my mind just from my own imagination with no outside influence is bad or unhealthy. There's nothing inappropriate about it. So it was a little bit easier as I got older, and I realized, and I started having like memories of like, wow, like really, there was a show called Pen 15. It's like penis if you look at a calculator, right? It was a syndicated network show. I saw it on Hulu, but I heard somebody talking about it in like a TED Talk, I think. And it's about like kids coming of age. They're in middle school. They're getting their hormones are coming online. And it wasn't until I was watching the hormonal issue or episode of that show where like the girls are like speed bagging their bean in the bathroom stall in the middle school, and the boys are just, going ham on their stuff. And I was like, huh. And I started to like think back on my earlier before him sexuality, before it was sex, when it was just me feeling my body coming online with hormones changing and stuff. And I was like, oh wow. I mean, I was playing out some very sexual scenarios in my mind with my dolls or whatever when I had no imagery to teach me that. So this was organically in my brain. It was in my cellular DNA, and there's nothing inappropriate about it. And that was kind of like the catalyst for me going, oh, okay. So this isn't, I'm not this way because of anything that happened to me or anything that was done to me. I'm just this way. So I was able to stop slut shaming myself because of that. But it's not like everyone's story is different. It's everyone's just got to do that spelunking throughout their inner self themselves. There's nobody else that can do it for us. We have to find out we don't like something by trying it maybe 3 or 4 times and going, yeah, that's definitely not for me. But we've let society, we've let people we are never going to allow into our bedroom tell us what we're doing in our bedroom. It's asinine.
Yeah.
They're not
It is.
there. Who cares?
Right. And you also mentioned the phrase losing her virginity about Kelly. And so the funny thing is to highlight that when a girl has sex for the first time, she actually hasn't lost anything. But that term would be to imply that all of her, or a lot of her value, lies in her being a virgin. And where that would have come from was when our parents were purchasing husbands for us that were old men when we were 12 years old, and we had to be virgins so that they would want this little girl, basically, and she would bear children for them. And so there was a monetary exchange from the beginning when it came to sex, and they were purchasing titles, but they were purchasing a husband.
Yeah. Well, they were purchasing a wife. They were
Well, the girl's family would pay the dowry. So they would pay the man to marry this girl. And then
because at the time, women were not, society didn't allow for women to do any physical labor, and a lot of the jobs were physical labor. So she was a dependent. She was going to be a dependent because there was no place for her to earn a living and support herself in society. So the only way for her to have any value was if she was a desirable thing for somebody, for a man. And so they had to keep her chaste and virtuous. But I listen to a lot of Esther Perel, and marriage was a concept we came up with to figure out who's responsible for these fucking people. Who's got to feed these kids if somebody dies? Because we died often, early.
Mm-hmm.
There's offspring that are now dependents of the state if we can't determine who's responsible for them. And it was an imposition on women, but men were allowed to to conduct themselves business as usual. And we were supposed to be monogamous. Monogamous was not a concept that men ever had to impose upon themselves. It was only for us. So yeah, I mean, I say it again, we've messed up the human experiment surrounding sexuality. We've created an environment where women are embarrassed or shameful about their bodies. They don't understand at all what they like, what feels good to their body, or what they desire, because a lot of the time they feel like their desires are shameful, so they put that into a dark corner. And then we've taken every product under the sun and sold it to men using sexual innuendo or overt sexual references. And then these are the two beings that we've created that are supposed to be procreating and making more humans. And we're like, yeah, this will work. Figure this out. Fix this broken, unbalanced equation I just gave you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to get the compliance out of women back in that time, the shame around you're a burden, and the fact that you have children, can get pregnant and have children, that's a burden, although it is how we expand the population. It is how life comes about, and it is how we had laborers to work in our fields. So it was a very clever little trick, but for women to stick with it and stay and be monogamous, they needed to instill that shame.
Hey, we had matriarchal societies at one point, and I just think we were tired, and we were like, let's just see what they do with it for a while. We need to sleep in shifts from now on. This just never needs to happen again.
Yeah. A balance between patriarch and matriarch would be much more ideal than having one side have all the power.
You know, and the thing is, I think that there's a lot of conversation surrounding all of the wrongs that men have imposed on us, but we were there for the rearing and raising of them.
Yeah.
We were there, and we have a cross to bear in this whole equation. Maybe broken home, we had to work 3 jobs and weren't there to parent. There's any number of reasons, but we were there, and we were not involved enough in how our sons were being socialized, raised, and educated. And so we have a responsibility in this environment that we now are not happy with. But there's a lot of, the thing that I see most is, I don't think women understand just what rejection does to their partner. Like, I don't think that women understand that men, if you just let them pick you, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Like, there's almost nothing you can do to fuck it up. When a man has picked you, when a man loves you, and I'm taking her to my cave, that one's mine, and I'm going to do everything to protect it. They will continue to do everything to protect it. So often I hear from my clients, like, they've 5-10 years with no intimacy with their partner, and they just feel rejected. They feel like and they continue. I mean, do you think that we would continue to stay in that relationship if they just, for 5 years, stopped going to work and earning a paycheck? No. Like, they've gone day after day and gone to the job that they probably don't like, or maybe they do, but a lot of the times they don't. It's a paycheck. And they do the thing that they don't like doing day after day after day after day, to put food on the table, to provide for their family, and honor the person that they made that promise to. And then day after day after day after day, they get rejected. I'm not in the mood. I don't want to. I mean, women, we need to be realistic about things. Like, you can't expect your partner to remain faithful if you're not willing. Like, we gotta stop thinking of sex as an optional activity. Like, it is a basic human need to have physical contact, close physical contact with other humans. Babies that are not held skin to skin fail to thrive. Why do we accept it's a basic human need for infants, but then we think it's not something we need when we grow up? We think it's okay to neglect our partner of such a really, like, basic, crucial element of humanity. You know, it allows us to connect. And a lot of men just don't have the skills to access their intimacy and vulnerability, as long as that screaming load of testosterone is in the way. And I think if more women understood that the partner that they want to see out of their partner, the vulnerability, the softness, the connection that they're looking for out of their partner, is on the other side of probably a 5-minute blowjob that they don't want to give them. And it's sad, because we take longer to warm up. Our engine takes a while to rev up. You gotta, like, it's wintertime. You gotta crank the engine and let the car heat up. You don't just go drive it. Men, they're ready to go, like, it's go. So our bodies are not designed harmoniously to facilitate sexual intimacy. But if we were aware of how our evolutionary biology is different from our social biology, and how the gap that's in between those, we would think about things differently. You know, yeah, you might not be in the mood now, but by the time, and maybe he's not gonna last as long as you would like him to receive your pleasure, but you just don't let him sleep after round 1. Just keep things going, and then the next one's yours. You know, like, I think that we're talking about so many elements of our intimacy, like just the communication, the conversation. When one of the partners in a relationship is trying to avoid sex, the thing that I don't think anyone's aware of, or they're not talking about enough, is all the other aspects of their intimacy that are breaking down because of their avoidance of that one thing, that one activity they don't want to do, because they don't want to instigate something and then have to reject them. They don't even hold hands or kiss, or, like, They don't want to create an environment where they have to be saying no. So they just don't engage at all intimately. And so as a result of that, there's no contact. There's no hugs. There's no kissing. There's no hand holding. There's all of these things. It's like domino effects, all because one person's like, I'm not in the mood for sex. It's fine to not be in the mood for sex, but you've got to be aware of how drastically you're affecting your relationship and your partner's sense of self-worth and position and how they feel in the relationship and where they stand with you. Like, there's so much that fails when we're just avoiding that one thing. And if we would just stop avoiding the one thing, because I mean, listen, you can fumble through it enough times. You're going to get there sometimes. Sometimes it's going to feel really awesome. It's better if you can ensure you're going to get there every time, because then you're going to want to do it more frequently. Like I think if women knew guaranteed that they were guaranteed an orgasm from a sexual encounter with their partner, their mate, whether that's a marriage or just a boyfriend, girlfriend, if they knew that their orgasm was as guaranteed as men's usually is, they'd probably participate more often. But they don't know how to get themselves there. So if they can't get themselves there, good luck. Like, good luck talking somebody else through it. I really think I kind of want to do like a body body discovery course for women. Like, here's all the plethora of toys that you could play with to enhance your. There's so many. Women really showed up during the pandemic in sex tech. We came to play, and there's so many cool new things on the market that didn't exist before. And yeah, like, women need to just stop being so shy and just explore a little.
Yeah, getting to know our bodies, not feeling ashamed to explore them, choosing a partner based on actual attraction and things in common rather than what job he has and how he looks in society.
Listen, the statistics we're earning, like, we're outperforming them. There was so many more, the larger percentage of women in college getting advanced degrees. We're educating and financially and securing ourselves out of our dating environment, because as you get closer to the top of that pyramid of, higher education and better employment opportunities, your mate selection, because we are socially conditioned to choose our mates based on financial security and education and earning opportunity, and that's not going to go away overnight. And when you get to the top of the pyramid, there's less options. So we're all competing for less men now, because we've educated ourselves to the degree that we don't want the other mates. So we got to figure something out. I heard somebody, I think it was Jordan Peterson conversation that I heard. They were suggesting holding boys back and letting them, or holding girls back and letting boys start school sooner, so that because we mature faster, so that they were further into their education and career path ultimately down the road than we were, so that it would balance out the discrepancies we're having now. I don't know what the solution is, but
well, I think it's also that women, I think I say this all the time, but as we become more of the earner, there's less and less that the partner brings to the table that we need, right? So we're already trained as young people to take care of households and nurture people. So we're ready to do that mother role. And then we're out there getting educated, and now we're the career person. And then we get home and we do all of the other stuff. And the guy's over here, he went to work and he came home and he's just hanging out. And so the woman's like, fuck no, I don't want to have sex. Look at all this shit that I'm doing. Like, they have to be taught to do this stuff because they've never learned it. And And then they need to take the initiative to actually do some of it without being nagged, without calling her a nag, things like that. So it does get really hard to date as a woman becomes more educated. And it's also, I would say that we cannot say as women, like when we talk about patriarchy, that there were no women involved in making those decisions about empire, because there were women that had agendas just like the men, and had a scarcity mindset and wanted to be greedy. That was not only men, that was people. There were certain people that started that stuff.
And the thing is, what we're not talking about in this, what we haven't mentioned yet with regards to this part of the problem, is the way testosterone functions. Like, I don't think we're not talking enough about how different our hormone composition causes, how it presents differently for us in so many ways, and how thoroughly connected it is through so many systems of our body. But testosterone thrives on competition. It thrives on a challenge. It thrives, like, what stimulates them to produce is the chase. Like, that's the way testosterone functions. It's when we've emasculated men, and it's a problem, because they don't. If you emasculate your partner that was once an earner, you'll find they're not gonna. Slowly, the motivation's gonna go, the desire to achieve. Like, competition is healthy for men. It really is. I don't think it's as healthy for women. I think, honestly, we need to be more focused on community and friendship and collaboration. But men, what causes them to motivate, to get up and show up and sit at the table, is testosterone. It's their dominant hormone, and it behaves very differently than estrogen does, or any other hormone. I trained for a figure competition, like a few of them, and I had to supplement with a little bit of testosterone because I sit at the low end of the healthy range. And my trainer was like, it'll help you be more metabolic if we just bump it up to the higher end of this range. Everything will just be better. It'll be easier. So yeah, I was on the tiniest little amount. It was like 0.25 every like 10 days or something. Nothing in the grand scheme of things. But it was significant for my body, and just the difference that made. If women understood the feeling of testosterone, it's such an urgent hormone. It's like you can't think of anything else but whatever testosterone wants you to think about at that minute. If you're hungry, you're not hungry. You're fucking hungry. Like, you got to add like an expletive before it to make the word make sense. You're so hungry, you're so horny, you're so sleepy, you're so angry. It's so aggressive and exaggerated of a feeling. That's what men are dealing with. And I think if we just understood more, I think we really should be talking more about hormones and how they affect humans in all aspects of life. Mental health issues, so deeply connected to your hormones. Hormone regulation is key. And we've made men think that, like, if they're not manly, if they need to go get their testosterone supplemented, their testosterone has been steadily declining since they were 16. It's just steady. So if we want them to feel vibrant and want to go and attack life, we maybe shouldn't be having them in a testosterone depleted state. I have a lot of friends and they're like, oh, I'm not going to take testosterone. I'm like, you really should go see a doctor. And you need to see an endocrinologist, because your headaches, your sleep problems, they're all connected to you being hormonally imbalanced and dysregulated. And women too. That's a lot of why our sex drives sometimes are lacking. Babies really kind of zap it, from what I understand. I haven't had one myself, but I understand the science enough. I have a friend. Yeah, I've got a friend he's got 2 twin infants, 8 months old, and he's dealing with his baby. Their mother has severe postpartum depression, and That's not good. But he's like, oh, I can't tell her hormones, or she needs to get her hormones checked. I'm like, why can't you? Why is this a problem to talk about? Why is anything related to our health something that we would not want to talk about?
Because we've been trained that means we're defective to just even talk about it, which is where we're not doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The shame is just one of the most ridiculous things that stops any thriving.
Shame and guilt.
Yeah.
It's like a little terrible spiral. You need to get off the hamster wheel.
Yes. We're over our hour. So I think, we can end here, and I'd love to have you on again because there's more to talk about, of course.
Yeah. I've got all kinds of, I'm a wealth of like random knowledge from random sources. So.
Yeah, I have some pretty random stuff too.
Well, it's lovely seeing you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Alrighty. I'll see you soon. The end of the month.
Okay. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.